We are in Tzidkas Hatzadik, Ois Pei Zayin. Yesterday there was electrical work last night, even being done in the shul, and as of 15 minutes ago there was no internet here, so I want to give a shout out to Shalom for running in here, fixing the internet so that Baruch Hashem, a couple of people online listen also. This is a, I always give my characterizations of every paragraph in Rav Tzadok. This one is harsh and scary. Rav Tzadok says, you have a book, follow with me, Ein Gzeira Yotzah Mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ela B'Haskamas Tzadikei Hador. That there is never a Gzeira Min HaShamayim. Gzeira Min HaShamayim means pogroms, holocausts, Gzeira Min HaShamayim. Unless the tzaddikim of the generation maskim to it. They have to agree. When I read this first sentence, I was very thankful I'm not a tzaddik. I'm not privy, not maskim. This we find, he says, K'moshe Amru Be'idra Rabbah, it's part of the Zohar, Parshas Nosai, where the Zohar says on the pasuk in Tehillim Chavei, Soid Hashem Lireya, that Hashem shares his secrets with his tzaddikim, Lireya, with those that are fear him. Says the Zohar, what about that pasuk? What Soid is Hashem sharing with the tzaddikim? Says the Zohar, Ad lo yaskimu leinachten dinin la'alma. Unless the tzaddikim are somehow maskim, and we're going to learn what it means to be maskim. I'm sure there was no tzaddik alive said, oh, great idea, do a holocaust. I don't think that's what we're talking about. But somehow or another, they knew about it, and they gave a stempel of some sort, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. Let me just say this. It means to say that for whatever reason, unknown to us, sometimes there's a gzeira min hashamayim. This might come from the behavior of Klal Yisrael. It might come from something good for Klal Yisrael, but it's just something we can't understand in the bigger picture, perhaps. This could come from all kinds of in lanu yadayim v'raglayim to understand the gzeras of Hashem, and anybody who pretends to know or tells you why there's a gzera in Klal Yisrael, that's your siman that they have no idea what they're talking about. The very fact that they try to explain why bad things happen to good people is usually the most discreditable thing that anybody can do. And nor should anybody attempt to do that. However, the gzeira is the gzeira, but it requires, as I put it, the COO, the Tzadik, to say, okay, we'll do that. Somehow they'll do that. It brings a number of rights, but that's what the Zohar says. Lo yaskimu, lo nechasin dinen la'alma. Ad lo yaskimu, until they're maskim, lo nechasin dinen la'alma, no din will come from to the shemayim to the arts. Am I right? This is harsh? Yeah.
Well, what does this haskama even look like?
We're going to learn that.
That somebody knows, oh, there's going to be a holocaust coming up, and you know what? Okay, let's bring it on. Somebody said that? Are we saying that the tzaddikim of Europe or whatever?
We're going to learn.
Sorry, the gzeira we're talking about.
Relax for a minute. Lord.
It's a gzeira on the cloud or on the individual as well? We don't know.
I don't know. Eich yezeh. Oh, Shol's mechaven to the kasha. I'll tell you one thing about Rav Tzadok HaKohen. He just says it like it is. The way he understands it. I mean, like there's no diplomacy in the words of Rav Tzadok. I'm not sure why he was like that. But and it wasn't, he had a kesher with Kutsk, everybody knows, Rav Tzadok had a kesher with Kutsk, an indirect kesher with it's good to review the history once in a while. Rav Tzadok was Litai, he was a Litvak, he was a nechet of the Grove. His father was a Litvish Rav in Lita. He was a very Litvish person, and then for his own personal life reasons, he was Megarish his wife, and the Beis Din wouldn't let him be Megarish his wife because they felt there were no grounds for the divorce. For him to divorce his wife, I think he was 15 or 14 when he was Megarish his wife. But he felt somehow Mala Asu B'Yuchsin, and here you see his kind of like Midas Hadin Rav Tzadok HaKohen. He was a Kohen, and he felt this wasn't appropriate for him. She didn't do anything wrong, but I think she was over a Yichud once by accident or something. And the Beis Din wouldn't let him be Megarish, chill out. Like they wouldn't let him be Megarish his wife. So he ran around Europe and became to get Meya Chasimos. See, today after Meir Rabbanim, there's a place on the internet you go and boom, a couple $100 you have Meir Rabbanim. They have to be 100 Rabbanim from different countries and different places and all kinds of halachas with the Heter Meir Rabbanim. Heter Meir Rabbanim, you understand what it is? Just while we're here, in other words, you're not allowed to marry two wives. That's a cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon, and so the only way to get rid of a cherem of Rabbeinu Gershon, the Rishonim, is to get Meir Rabbanim to be maskim. There's also a cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon, you're not allowed to read somebody else's mail. So you can get Meir Rabbanim and read somebody else's mail. Doesn't seem to be as popular as a get, but which is a big deal because like if you're looking at somebody's computer or somebody's phone, there's a big Yitzhahara to read somebody else's mail. You don't have to open the letter. You don't have to hold it over the tea kettle like people used to do. When I was a kid, so it would open without you being able to say, hey, just look at somebody's email or something. So that's a cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon, same as marrying two wives. There's a famous story about a Rosh Yeshiva that used to censor everybody's mail, controlling Rosh Yeshiva. So he called over one of the younger lights and he said, you have a letter from your wife. So he said, which one? Good Brisker story, yeah? So Rav Tzadok, eventually went to Lublin, and he found the Ishbitzer Rebbe, who was the opposite of the Gra, and the Ishbitzer Rebbe had run away from the Kutzker. History, the Kutzker was too harsh for him, and he ran away from the Kutzker, and he ran started his own Chassidus in Lublin. As the Ishbitzer Rebbe, and this Ishbitzer Rebbe attracted all kinds of Litvish people. Very interesting. One of them was Rav Akiva Eger's grandson. So it was an interesting. One of them was Rav Tzadok, and there you found in Lublin a Hasidic chabura of the biggest lamdim in the world, like the biggest lamdonim in the world. So there was it was just a very interesting thing to me because on the one hand, it opened up a whole side of Ava, because his Ishbitzer was so full of Ava, everything was upside down for him. Like every bad person was good, and with Fisher maybe that was more like telling it like it is. That was more the derech. And this here you have a Litvische Chabura that was very attracted to the Ishbitzer, and they all became rebbes. They all became rebbes, but they had this sort of combination of being telling you like it is, like a good Litvak, and being very upside down, like a good Ishbitzer. So it's a very interesting thing, and I just find this. I'm mentioning this because I see it in Rav Tzadok a lot. I see this, and right here we see these two tzadim. So on the one hand, the first thing he's saying is, hey, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't bring, if we see any xeris in the world, so this is with the haskama of the tzadikim. Soid Hashem lireyev means they know about it, and somehow or another they're maskim to it. So echi yezeh, how does that look? That's Reb Tzadik. Aloyhem adrabah. We don't find this to be true. The tzadikim are the ones that are leading us all in prayer, in tehillim, right? Adrabah. Mispalim badam. We see that tzadikim are always davening. Wasn't Avraham Avinu davening for stone? Everybody's davening for the generation, not destroying them. Rakshahu. So here's the way it worked. Very tricky situation. Rakshahu be'inyan acher hadomalo. It's almost like, I'm saying my words, it's almost like the tzadikim are trapped into the situation. Because they give a psak, they're forced to give a psak on something which is not the gzeira, on some other issue, but that psak now applies to, if that's how that works, says Hashem, so now you've just created a gzeira on Klal Yisrael. So, like, I would say like this, just to make it a little bit less harsh, that it's, Kadosh Baruch Hu does what he does. As I said, we don't understand what Hashem does. But at the same time, he wants us to accept his gzeras. That's part of being an Eved Hashem. That's part of, we have to accept the Kach Gozer Hashem. And we have to feel at some way or at some point that it's fair, right? Sidu Kadin.
Did say when they saw her go to the office that they went up and they asked if this could be turned over or not?
Okay, sure. I'm not getting the connection.
That they apparently could have turned it over, but when the Shemaim said
they were masking.
Okay.
I thought you were saying the other way. Yeah. There's two things to learn from there. Number one is, of course, they were didn't want to. They were saving Klal Yisrael, but Zerahim Milfanai. Rabbi Kiva said Zerahim Milfanai. That's what the Asar Rugim Al-Chasal said. Zerahim Milfanai. It's a Zerah. Why is it a Gzeira? Did it have to do with Mechiras Yosef? So what do you want from Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva? Okay, this is Hashem. Sees a very different picture than what we see. We see the next step in front of our nose. Maybe if we're really smart, we could see, Chachamadav Minov, we could see 2 steps, 3 steps in front of us, but we don't see the whole world and the whole Shemayim. So Hashem says, Gzeira hi milfanai. This is a Gzeira. Shtoik, Rabbi Kiva. Even Rabbi Kiva, you can't talk about this. So what happens is, hu be'inyan acher, rakshu be'inyan acher adoimalai. Okay, let's see it. Ke'inyan, here's an example. Shahaya b'David HaMelech olav ha'shalom ba'kivsa. Now, I have it here, but just in the interest of time, let me just remind you of the psukim in Tanakh, fascinating psukim in Tanakh. David HaMelech, the great David HaMelech, was nichshal in being attracted and moving towards Bathsheba, married Bathsheba. It was as far as I know, it was a sexual attraction. There might be some Rebbesh things to say about it, but as far as I know, we see how human David was, and the Gemara says, "Kol ha'omer sheDavid HaMelech chata eino elo toyev." Gemara says, if you say David HaMelech did a chet, then you're making some kind of mistake. Didn't do a chet, but the whole Tehillim is David HaMelech doing tshuva. So something wasn't kosher here, but technically he didn't do a chet. Technically he worked it out. He was a Baal Halacha, David HaMelech, and he worked it out not to do a chet. So we know what happened. He was attracted to Bathsheba. He brought her into his house. What are we going to do about Bathsheba's husband, who was Uriah Hachiti? By the way, Uriah Hachiti. He was a Hittite. What are we going to do about him? Okay, as is the Yitzhahara of many people in very high places, we'll take care of him. We'll get rid of him. And that's what he did. He sent them to war, he put them in a dangerous spot, and he got rid of them, and this whole thing was Lav Ruach Chachamim Noicha Heimen. This was not a Gishmakas story, but again, it shows you the sort of like integrity and honesty of Tanakh. That all stories are fair. All stories are fair when it comes to the Manhigei Yisrael. And be careful. Anyway, so David HaMelech apparently did not realize the Chomer Hadavar of what he did. The Gemara says this. The Gemara says that whether we should say David HaMelech did a chet or not is, okay, question. David HaMelech felt he did no chet. To him, step by step, he did the correct thing. He wanted to marry this woman, be with this woman, Bathsheba. She was very beautiful. Maybe he saw the future of Shlomo HaMelech and I don't know. But from his point of view, he thought it was okay. I'm just going to give you a little bit here. And then in Shmuel Beis, Perek Yud Beis, let's take a look here for a second. And you'll see many Tehillim relating to this. Tanakh says, "Vayishlach Hashem es Nasan el David." Nasan was the Navi, and Nasan, V'voyei Nasan Hanavi. Nasan Hanavi, what is the prophet coming here for? Vayavoyei Lov, V'yomer Loi, and he says to him, instead of saying like, what the heck did you do here? He didn't say that. He says like this, Nasan Hanavi says to him, which is, by the way, there's not what we're learning. Fantastic lessons here in how to correct other people and how to, and to put it in a nutshell, criticism probably never works. Criticism is not the way, and you take it to the other correction might be good if a person's open to it, but the right way is to make a person realize something themselves. That's the correct way. That's what the Torah says. Hocheach tochiach es amisecha. Just tochiach means show the person, point out to the person that they themselves should chab what's going on. We're all very critical. I'm just saying that, me too. But in my being self-critical, I think is maybe that's not good either. But it doesn't work. Criticism doesn't work. Doesn't work with our kids. Doesn't work with our wives, with our husbands. It just doesn't.
And this is about government also. That we told that he doesn't have busha. And yet, despite that,
Afal Pikain.
Yeah.
So Nasan Navi is like a side lesson here, which since we're learning, I don't want to lose the lesson that Nasan Navi knew how to talk to David HaMelech. The purpose of a Navi is to do the mitzvah v'yichayach toichiach as amisech lochiach. Afilu elef pamim, by the way. The Gemara says toichiach again and again and again. I saw this in the in Chazal. It doesn't mean necessarily that. Well, if he keeps doing the Aver, tell him again and again and again and again. If he don't just be a total nudnik. No. If he doesn't get it, try another angle. And another angle, and another angle. That's what the pasuk probably means. If he doesn't understand right away. So his Nasan Navi comes to David, whoa, and he tells him like this, let me give you a story that just happened. Doesn't even call it a metaphor. There was two people in one city, Echad Asher ve'Echad Rosh. One was very wealthy and one was very poor. Asher hayatzayin uvakar harbe ma'od. The wealthy person had tons of stuff. Had flock, he had house, real estate, everything. Well, the Rosh ain't kol. The Rosh had nothing. Kiim, all he had was kivsa achas kitana asher kana. He invested his life savings into a little lamb. A little lamb. He raised the lamb. It was a family pet, this lamb. Fed it from his own food. It's like we would have a dog or a cat. So this guy had a lamb, says Nasan Navi in his story. Ubechekoi tishka, sleep in his bed. Vatihiloi kibas. Fascinating. Like a child in the house. And then he goes to the Asher. He wants to make it easy, he wants to dine with the Asher. He's looking for an opportunity to dine with the Asher. Maybe he'll help him. What does the Asher do? He says, okay, sit here with me. Food? Give me your lamb. Lamb or goat? Lamb. Give me your lamb, and we'll barbecue it. And that'll be dinner for us tonight. Like, you have a whole farm here. You have a whole, what do you want from my little lamb? So this is a story that he tells David HaMelech, Ki'ilu, for to get a psak din from David HaMelech. Vayicharaf David b'yishmoid. I mean, what kind of a person is that? David HaMelech says, what kind of a... Vayomer el nasan chai Hashem ki ben maves ha'ish ha'oiseh zos. Kill that guy off with his head. That Ashir. That's so ruthless. That's so wrong. So David HaMelech, Nasan HaNavi's derech here was, let me tell you a story. You tell me what to do in the story, and David HaMelech says, Chai Misa. So that's pretty harsh. I don't know if he meant it literally, but Chai Hashem, which I saw in the Mefarshim, they say that when you say Chai Hashem, Ki Ben Mavis, means Hashem will give him a Misa Mishunah. It doesn't mean we should kill him. But the truth is that a Melech, the truth is, a king is allowed to kill anybody if in Biylă. Meaning, like a king is above the judicial system of Klal Yisrael.
License to kill.
License to kill, exactly right. And, so I mean, I don't know why. Maybe he meant Kibshutai, like, yes, this person, bring him here. We don't want him amongst us. Chai Hashem ben Mavis ha'ish ha'oiseh zos. Before you kill him, let him pay for the goat. He has to pay from his estate 4 times, 4 kivsais. Like so, Ekev asher asas hadavar azev al asher lo chamal. This is because he had no rachamim. Hayomer nasan el David. Ata ha'ish. You're the man. Koyamar Hashem Elikei Yisrael. This is what Hashem says. Ratzon Hashem. Anoichi mishachticha lemelech HaYisrael. Hashem says, I made you a king. You're a great man. I brought you to Gedula. Anoichi tzalticha miyad Shol. I saved you from Shol. You're in charge of everything, of everybody. Rashi says he was talking about Michal Bashol. He got married to Michal Bashol. Like, Etna Lecha as Beis Adonecha, Ves Neshei Adonecha B'chekecha, Etna Lecha as Beis Yisrael v'Yehuda. You're the king of the whole Klal Yisrael. V'ma'at v'yisifa Lecha kaheno kahena. And I could keep on going with what the gifts that Hashem has granted to you. Madua bazisa dvar Hashem lasas hara be'enai. Why did you stoop so low in the story of Bathsheba? As Uriah Hachiti, Hikisa Bacherev. Don't call it by. Don't disguise this. Get out of your denial. As Uriah Hachiti, Hikisa Bacherev. As Ishtay Lakachta L'Chalaisha. Then he went ahead and took the woman. V'ata harakta b'cherev b'nei Ammon. V'ata loisaser cherev mibeischa ad olam ekev ki b'zisani. Your hands will now be full of blood. There will always be attacks on the Beis Yisrael. There will always be wars, and you're going to have to deal with a whole different thing. Why? Ki b'zisani v'tikach es eshes Uriah hachiti liyos l'cha li'isha. Because you did this. Now, I don't know if everyone is familiar with that part of the story, but the whole klala, if you will, the gzeira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Am Yisrael ad kedei kach, yadecha damim milu, he couldn't even build the Beis Hamikdash. David HaMelech, he got so involved with wars and bloodshed and all kinds of terrible stories that he wasn't even right to build the Beis Hamikdash. It had to be built only at the time of Shlomo HaMelech. So this was all, says the Nasan Navi. Why? You want to know why this is all going to happen? Because you gave in and you killed somebody to take his wife. Uriah Hachiti. So you don't need Rav Tzadok. This is pretty harsh. Nasan Navi. However, what you see here is the lima that Rav Tzadok is bringing out. There's so much to say about this and to think about this and how everything works, is that at the end of the day, besides for mitzvahs teichacha and Nasan Navi doing it correctly, David HaMelech had to paskin himself. David HaMelech had to paskin himself that ben mavesu, Chai Hashem ki ben mavesu. David HaMelech had to understand himself how terrible this was, and how Nasan Navi, I'm sure we could learn for days and days about why this was a comparison to a kivsha, ani, and an asher. But I don't think it's so complicated. Bathsheba, Uriah, they were defenseless, and you're the king, so you can't do that. So what we see here is that this gzeira that came out. I think there's 2 points to it. One point is that the gzeira that came on David was something that David had to say. And that's what it means that a tzaddik is maskim to the gzeiras Hashem. So David HaMelech did not have to walk around his whole life and say, oh, why, God, are you doing this to me? He knew. Nasan Navi told him exactly why God is doing it to him, except he told him in a way that he has to come to it himself. So if you carry this on to a tzaddik in, let's say, Ardar, Chalila, we should have Peronius. So it's all about the tzaddik realizes in advance, and even as maskim, that ethically speaking, that what should happen over here is there should be a gzeira. Tzaddik is maskim to that. Once a tzaddik is maskim to that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's go to gzeira. By the way, I researched this a little bit, not always. Doesn't mean just because the tzaddik is maskim that there's a gzeira, because we have records. I was thinking about in Chazal of many gzeiras that were supposed to happen. What was the name of the tzaddik, by the way, in Beitar, the time of Bar Kochba? Elazar ben Modoy. Tzaddik was a different story. Elazar ben Modoy, he was davening, and he was holding the gzeira up. And they hopped at the Romans and they killed him. So there's like a tzaddik does hold up a gzeira from happening, but the gzeiras Beitar was one of the worst things that happened in Eretz Yisrael in history. We talk about Tisha B'Av, talk about the Chorban Bayis Rishon, the Chorban Bayis Sheni, and the Chorban Beitar. That's what we talk about. Yirmiyahu. I always like to point out that this, if you have a book, this is in parentheses, meaning that after the book was written, Tzadok added this. Yirmiyahu haya b'bnei anasais. Here's another example. Yirmiyahu cursed. Yirmiyahu was a prophet of doom, as he was called, warning people. He was a tzaddik. He was warning people of the imminent chorban of the Beis Hamikdash. But when he came, he was from Anasais. It's the first pasuk in Yirmiyahu. He was from Anasais. That's a city in.
North of Yerushalayim. North of Yerushalayim.
Yeah, it's Anatot. It's where the winery is. It's north of like yeah. In the Psagot area. That's Anatot. That was a lot of Nevi'im there. in that place. But anyways, when he went there, there were particularly, everybody was against Yirmiyahu's prophecy. Nobody wants to hear, that we're all going to be destroyed, and the end is coming, and the Beis Mikdash is going to be destroyed. But when he came to Anasas, they were particularly against him and even plotted to kill him, which might be interesting because maybe they were feeling that the words themselves were causing harm. But they plotted to kill him, and Yirmiyahu cursed them. He says, "You're all chayim misa, and you'll all starve, and your children will starve, and you'll go into Golus." So it says in Yirmiyahu, particularly. And Hashem said, "Oh, this is not mida keneged mida. This is, that's what you think. So I have such a gzeira in the bank here, and came the Chorban Yerushalayim." So not only was Yirmiyahu the Tzadik, the Navi, warning about the Chorban Yerushalayim, on some level, he caused, or he was masking to the Chorban of Yerushalayim.
So Rabbi Yaakov and Zakkai was afraid he did to himself, and deathbed was afraid he...
Yes. Shtei drachim lefanai. He was talking about Yoshiyahu. So the Kisei Shel Eliyahu, Shel Yoshiyahu. We've got to get to Yoshiyahu in a minute. The Golus Haser Shvatim. Who caused the Golus of the 10 tribes, the 10 lost tribes? So, Haya Yeshayahu. Oh my gosh. Hard to be him. Yeshayahu. B'Shevna. Shevna, let me remind you who he was. Shevna was a Tzadik. His name was Shevnayahu. Then he became a Rasha, and he deleted the Yah from his name, and he became Shevna. He was the Gizbar of the Beis HaMikdash at the time of the Bayis Rishon. He had the keys. He was the one in charge of the Beis HaMikdash. And Chazal point out sometimes he's called the Gizbar of the Beis HaMikdash in Tanakh. That's the beginning of Yeshayahu. And sometimes he's called the Sofer, which doesn't mean like he wrote Sefer Torah. It means he was a secretary of the Beis HaMikdash. He was demoted. But the point is, he became a politician. This is what's very important to know about Shevna. Mamish the case. Here was a guy who was involved in the Beis HaMikdash, a religious guy, a good guy, and then he got involved in politics. And when he got involved in politics, like one of the many terrible things that happen to people who get involved in politics is that they know better than everybody because they understand the reality on the ground, the political on the ground. It's very often a huge chutzpah on the part of the politicians because they'll go against not sages. I don't mean only Jewish sages, but they'll go against some of the greatest sages in history, non-Jewish sages. Like once you're in politics, something goes screwy in your mind. But although we can't live without them, it's
Power corrupts. Power corrupts.
Power corrupts. Yeah. So Shevna became corrupt, and what was his corruption? So in Sefer Yeshaya it says that his corruption was that he was a fan of Chizkiah Melech, who was tied in with Yeshayahu Hanavi, and they both felt at the time that they should worry about the Assyrian siege on Israel, and Shevna went against them, but they had very clear direction. Chizkiah Melech was a big tzaddik, and they thought at the time Chizkiah Melech, who was a Ben David, would actually be able to be Mashiach or bring Mashiach because he was so powerful in handling the situation so well as a tzaddik. But he wasn't Mashiach, and part of it was because of Shevna. So Shevna interfered in the politics, and he went and tried to make an alliance with Melech Ashur and try to make peace with Egypt. You see what was going on is that the Assyrians were up here, Babylonians, the Assyrians, as we're talking about here, Sennacherib was Assyrian, not to be confused with Babylonians. They were up in north, and Egypt was, as it is today, down south. The geography is still the same, and they were all fighting in Israel because of it was a land bridge and got them from north to south and south to north. So, the little Israel becomes the headlines of every newspaper in the world because it happens to be that we're geographically situated between the superpower Assyria and the superpower of Egypt. So here we are in the middle over here, and we can all get crushed because of being in the middle, or we can use it smartly and figure out how to negotiate. And it's amazing how history does not change. I think the reason history does not change is because people don't change. So you could have just the same story, different generation, but human nature is human nature. So you're going to have the Tzadik, and you're going to have the Russia, and you're going to have the superpowers, and you're going to have the nudniks and the politicians. So
the nudniks and the politicians are the same thing.
Well, the politicians are Rishayim.
Who are the nudniks?
I don't know if I've ever mentioned that I don't like politicians. I don't have an alternative. I'm just personally, the last thing I would want the world to be is some kind of theocracy right now. But just it's so hard to stay honest. It's just so hard to stay honest and not just be self-centered. And as well, I'm here. Let me just give you the Yaacov Haber definition of politics. Politics means that I do something for you and I expect something back in return. So the minute that's the case, you're a politician. If you're a politician representing the people or representing the Navi or representing whoever you represent, democratic politician, so you're doing something else. You're helping the people. But the minute it's like I scratch your back, you scratch my back, and people in relationships are very political. Just personal, like all of them, very political. Before we do something for another person, a chesed, we think for a minute in our minds, how many points is this going to get me? And that's politics. And that's not the way that's not Lishma. Lishma, I'm not saying we're there, anybody's there, but we've got to get, that's the goal of being a Torah person, is that you're not political. And that's my problem with it. This is not about points or a scorecard or anything else. So whether it's with our children, with our marriages, with our community, it's not political. And once I see something's political, I don't trust them anymore. Because once you're political, you're all of a sudden,
And politics inherently because
am I being honest, or?
They want to be re-elected, so they're doing things to be re-elected. That's
how do all the policies change 3 months later? I'm not, all of a sudden that's. You see that I can live with, because you're supposed to be doing the will of the people. So if the will of the people in the democratic system, the will of the people is to do that. So change, okay, that's okay. But I just. Okay, I think I made myself clear. So that's Yirmiyahu, that's Yeshayahu, it's Shevna. So Yeshayahu, what happened over here is that when he was prophesizing the Chorban Beis Hamikdash, he already did that. It wasn't just Yirmiyahu, and he said, and Shevna is mamish going to get hurt. He's mamish going to get his. So he didn't have to say that. And Chazal point out that I think it was 3 times that Yeshayahu slipped in his language. He didn't have to say it. One of the main one that we all know is he says, Ish tmei svasayim anoichi umitoich am tmei svasayim anoichi yoshevas, and Hashem gave him Musar. You're allowed to say you're a tmei svasayim, but you're not allowed to say that you're not allowed to be makatrik. We tell you that we're all bad. You can't do. And apparently Yeshayahu, the Tzadik, who we would of course all be lining up to give him brachas, we would even give him an aliyah if he came here to KSY. But nevertheless, he said things. The Tzadik, sometimes the Tzadik says something. So this, when he criticized Shevna this way, Hashem unleashed the Chorban in a different way, in a harsher way than he would have. The same thing was with the Asaras Hashvatim by Yirmiyahu, by Yirmiyahu. But it didn't have to be. There would have been a galus of Asaras Hashvatim. But what Yirmiyahu did is he included Yehuda and Yerushalayim in his Musar. So now Yehuda and Yerushalayim also got bombarded by the by the Babylonians. So Avraham Avinu, this is, by the way, a fascinating sentence. Avraham Avinu b'stom. Now, when you just read that, Avraham Avinu b'stom, we know what that means, right? Avraham Avinu was aware of stom. Of course, I would talk to Avraham Avinu about it. So God talked to Avraham Avinu, talked to him about stone, and he did everything that he could to defend stone. So, and I guess the way I would have read this is that he, at the end, was masking. Okay, Ein Asor Tzadikim. There's no 10 Tzadikim in stone. Go ahead. So he was masking. That's not what he says. Avraham Avinu but stone. Where did he cause the Chorban? B'meshe hifrid light mikaidim. Wow, fascinating. You don't have to go all the way to the part of the story that Hashem spoke to him. He was when he came to Eretz Yisrael with Lot, he said he buried Name'alai. Let's go two different directions. You go to stone, Kegan Hashem Keres Mitzrayim, how beautiful is stone. You take care of that. I'll stay in the Hebron Hills, and we'll do it that way. When he said he parayed Name'alai, not because he was masking to stone, he caused a pirud in the Jewish people. According to the Zohar on the pasuk, never left. When he said to Lot, he parayed Name'alai, he understood Preda. Now,
it's very harsh on the tzaddikim also.
Everything's harsh. It's not easy being a tzaddik, I heard. No, I mean, but Avraham Avinu b'stayim hu b'meshe hifrid light mikaydem. V'chein hakol, says Reb Tzadok. Ein kan makomo laharach, Baruch Hashem. Ein kan makomo. V'lachein, and therefore, let us say this, tzarech shmir b'zeh, be careful. Shelo yetze le'olam davar ra mipiv. Don't say things that are bad. Be careful. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for a word, a haskama from a tzaddik, and a tzaddik has to be careful what they say. Just 1 second, read the sentence. V'lakach Hatzadik nitpas. The tzaddik himself will be destroyed. Ubahadi hutze lake karava, which is a Gemara in Bava Kama that talks about the case when somebody's trying to pull the thorns out of the bush and he messes up the whole bush. So there is no, in other words, this is like what the Gemara means there is like the good have to suffer with the bad. The tzaddik said this gzeira. Ubavadai hakol b'mishpat. Don't think for a minute that this is not a mishpat. It's like a crazy, voodoo tzaddik, causing gzeiras and klal Yisrael. But mishpat. Hashem was ready to do this. And we find all kinds of discussions like this in Tanakh between the Navi and Hashem. Who gram leparanusam, but he was ibneshe hiskim, because he was maskim. Who gram leparanusam, he was goyrem the Peronius to. He opened up the dam, the floodgate. Lakach mimenu maschil, and that's why he's the one who gets it first. Kidei yisabu avukama. Period. Just finish the words. B'inyan mida toiva, ki inyan mida toiva. It's just like a tzaddik could find something good to say. This should also happen. A tzaddik should find something good to say. Mispala al chaver nenatchila, and he will be the first to be rewarded for saying something good to say. Every tzaddik is guilty of this. Rak Mashiach. And then the legendary words of Ein Kad Makoimai. Now that I said so much bad about politicians, I just want to say something political. Not really political, but I'm just talking about the politics. One of the things that we have to be careful what we say. That's all I want to say. And I feel like I should say, I said to my wife last night, I said, I have what to say, but I don't want to say it because who am I to say? Just say it. So I don't care who you are. We should never be calling other Jews Nazis, because immediately unleashed is a misa mashuna. I'm not blaming anything, tzadikim. I'm just saying, you know what a Nazi is? Even the opposition leader got up and said, my father had a number on it. You're telling Nazis, Okay, it doesn't allow him to do anything, but we don't call other Jews Nazis, because what happens is, shalom, is that Hashem looks at the world and says, oh yeah, is that kind of midah here in this world? And boom, we suffer. And it's true every time. It's true every time. And these are the tzadikim. These are the very, very chashuva people. But Nazi, worse than the Nazis. You put yellow stars on Haredim. Nobody's putting yellow stars on Haredim. I'm not commenting on the politics of anything, like Haredim and not Haredim and army and this and that. I don't know. Everybody's wrong and everybody's right. I don't know. All I know is that I would say almost all the people in the Knesset are not Nazis. Jews are not Nazis. And you don't say this. And then I just want to make my point clear. The people you're calling Nazis are the people that are representing the people of Israel. So what are you really saying? Okay, flame off. I just feel like I'm saying it because how careful we have to be. From the injuries? The crane. Just be careful. I don't understand Afghanis. I went to them when I was a kid. Told to go, went to them. I truly believe probably accomplished much more by sitting in the base medrash on many levels. You can accomplish more if you're arguing for learning, so learn. If that's your... Does this make sense? Like the whole thing, and On the other hand, like, what are you supposed to do in this country? You have to make Hafganas. If you don't make a Hafgana, nobody listens, whether it's the right or the left. Everything is so confusing to me. I'm wondering why just about everybody in Israel is so excited about the protesters in Iran. The Haredim are not allowed to be mafkin. Grab their guns, shoot them. They're oppressors. Everyone's allowed to be mafkin. We like it. Wonderful. Get rid of them. Except Haredim. Haredim are not allowed to be mafkin. On the other hand, I just read this yesterday, that in Iran, they don't let anybody under 18 come to the protests. So, too dangerous. So, But all I'm saying, my point is that Baruch Hashem, we're not Nazis. Hashem should be merachim on us and see what tzadikim we are, and how careful we are, and how everything is l'shem shamayim. And we're not political. All people want is to learn Torah, and people that don't understand it because they're thinking of pikuach nefesh on the other side. It's very hard to understand this. If you're the worst anybody is here is a tinnik shenishba. That of the opposition is the biggest tinnik shenishba in Israel, by the way. Everybody is a tinnik shenishba, and that's how we have to be down l'kavschus, and everybody is down l'kavschus. Kodesh Baruch Hu is down us l'kavschus, and it's turned around all the gzeiros on Klal Yisrael, v'malvus l'chaim, Hashem. Thank you. Gil, I'm sorry.
Just on the idea, I remember seeing, I think, in the Baal Shem Tov, that he touches up din cheshbon. It's backwards. It should be cheshbon and din. This idea of din, the cheshbon, is you do the din, then the cheshbon is done. Exactly this idea.
Baal Shem Tov?
Yeah.
The Gross says it. The Gross says it.
I think I thought the Baal Shem Tov din cheshbon.
Okay. Both sides of the chavrusa. Okay.